Welcome, everyone. Welcome. We're just going to wait a few minutes for the room to populate, and we will get started with the webinar. So get comfortable, get some tea and coffee, because we're in for a wonderful discussion today. All right. So today, the webinar is our third and final webinar in the Endowment Giving webinar series. So maybe you have attended some of the other webinars. Today, we are discussing growth strategies for success. We have a panel of experts, development experts from ECF. So it's going to be a very lively and interactive discussion. My name is Juliet Acker, and I am the Program Director for Endowment Marketing at the Episcopal Church Foundation. And I will be your host and moderator for today's session. So thank you everyone for coming today. Before we start, I would like to give you a quick overview of what to expect in this webinar. As I said, this webinar is interactive, and the questions that our panelists will be answering are questions that we've received from many clients over the years about endowment giving. But we want to hear from you. So please take this opportunity to ask your questions. There is a Q&A box below. So put in your questions, and if we have time at the end of the webinar, we will answer them. If we run out of time, please trust that we will get back to you and email you with our answers. Okay. One other thing, so you know, this webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be sent to you tomorrow with another resource from this webinar. Okay, so without further ado, let me introduce you to our illustrious panel. Joining us today, we have Ann Richardson. She is the Senior Program Director for Investor Relations and the Endowment Management Program at ECF. And we have Yvonne Jones-Limbo, who is ECF's Development Director. So we're very pleased and honored to have them here and to benefit from their wisdom and guidance. So let's start with our first question. And let's start with you. So over the years, many clients have come to us with their challenges in growing their endowment fund. And really, the challenge that they talk to us about is really encouraging and engaging their congregation in the endowment giving program. So, Ann, can you talk to us, give some advice to our participants about how they can engage and encourage their congregation to give?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Juliet. Thank you for that very kind introduction. And it's nice to see so many people here with us today. And I actually think this is a great question to start with, because even in just the first few weeks of this year, I've already talked to a number of churches who are feeling the energy to kind of start or reinvigorate their endowment giving program. And typically when we're thinking about encouraging giving to the endowment, this is about regular communication over time, encouraging your parishioners to remember the church at the end of their life. You certainly can run a specific campaign in which you're trying to earn current gifts for the endowment, but today we're really focused on those legacy gifts or planned gifts that you're trying to get into your endowment. And so if you're thinking about how can I encourage this type of giving, I'd say there are three things that you could focus on. The first one of these is building trust. You should know how your parishioners think about the church's finances overall, and then also about the endowment generally. Do you have their trust in how you receive their gifts, in how you manage their gifts, and in how you spend their gifts? You can build this trust. One way to do that specific to your endowment is to be pretty transparent about your endowment governance. So this means posting your policies, particularly your spending policy and your gift acceptance policy, which is often the ones that people are most interested in. And then also being really clear about who's on your endowment committee, how they got there, and how long their terms are. And if you don't have a separate endowment committee, that would also apply for your finance committee or whatever group it is that has the mandate to oversee your endowment. Generally, when you're receiving that gift to the endowment, this is a gift that you're going to steward after the donor has departed this earth. And so in order to be worthy of receiving that gift, you need to earn their trust. The second thing that I think you could focus on in trying to encourage endowment giving is how you are going to share the impact of your endowment. A lot of us have just gotten through our annual meetings, or maybe yours is coming up. And an annual meeting is a great place to talk about the size of the endowment, the investment performance, but really most importantly, the use of the endowment. And the annual meeting is an important place. It is not the only place. It is not the only place. You also want to talk about your use of the endowment in your church newsletter, as a blurb in your bulletin, or even as an offering talk. And you also want to think about how you can incorporate discussion of the endowment regularly throughout the year in your Sunday announcements, or even in your prayers of the people. We have that part in our prayers where we give thanks for all the blessings of this life. And you can use that as a way to give thanks to your endowment committee and their stewardship of gifts, or to give thanks for something specific that the endowment has recently done for your church, or to give thanks for those who have committed to making a bequest to the church. The basic point is to make your communications about the endowment use frequent and regular throughout the year so that they build awareness within your parish. And then the third thing is you do want to pick 1 or 2 times in the year where you're going to highlight this type of giving specifically, but that's going to be within the context of having this regular communication where people are already, having the awareness. So what type of event is going to work best in your church context, whether that's a Sunday morning forum or an evening gathering, a Zoom meeting, perhaps a special luncheon. However your church best receives information and also likes to gather, that's the type of event that you want to hold. And you also want to think about the time and the church year when you might do this. Some churches use their baptism Sunday for this type of deep dive or education on planned giving. Other churches might use the period of Lent, which we have coming up, to do this type of education. Or you could even think about All Saints Sunday as an opportunity. So your church best, pick the time in your parish life when you can specifically highlight what the endowment means to your church, how people have given to it over time, and then what their specific gift is going to mean for the future of your church community.
Great information, Anne. Thank you so much for that. I also want to just give a plug to the webinar that we did before, which was Marketing Your Endowment, which has many more ideas about how you can really communicate the mission and the impact of your endowment. So great ideas and very useful and important to communicate with your church. Thank you. So Yvonne, let's talk about a comprehensive approach to endowment. Sometimes our clients come to us and there is a perception of tension between endowment giving and annual giving. So how do churches balance this endowment giving and create really a holistic view of stewardship?
So the key there is just in the words that you use. And this is a great question and a legitimate concern. And the words that I want to lift up that you mentioned, Juliet, are endowment and stewardship. So in many of our congregations, we have committees that have been formed to focus on both of these areas. There's an endowment committee or maybe the finance committee that's overseeing the governance of the endowment fund. But many congregations, many parishes also have stewardship committees who are looking toward stimulating generosity in the congregation. And the key to resolving that sense of tension is to have a collaboration between your endowment folks and your stewardship folks. And then conceptually, when we're thinking about stewardship, there's a great illustration called the three-legged stool that I'll just share briefly. That's a balanced and comprehensive understanding of the ways that we can exercise stewardship and show generosity to our congregations. So the first leg of the stool that you mentioned, Juliet, is the annual giving. And those annual gifts, that's the offering plate, that's that cyclical giving that's happening weekly or monthly or each year as each family determines what their support pledge is going to be. And those gifts often come through our monthly or annual cash flow. That's how we're making those kinds of decisions. We're looking at what's coming in and out on a monthly or weekly or annual basis, and we make our pledge based on those resources. Then the second leg of the stool, which we're all familiar with, is major gifts. So from time to time, a congregation, a parish will have an initiative that goes beyond the resources that come in through normal weekly giving. And you may have a capital campaign or some kind of special emphasis of giving to raise the capital, the funds for that special project. Maybe you want to pave the parking lot or get new paraments, or the choir has something special, or the youth group, whatever. It's some special initiative that's beyond the normal ebb and flow. And so then we're asking people for gifts above and beyond what they've pledged for their weekly or annual support. And so people will look toward different resources to bring together those funds. Maybe they will look at some of their savings, or maybe some of our older parishioners might look at using a qualified charitable distribution to bring some extra funds to bear to help with an initiative like that. Some of our congregants have donor advised funds that they may draw from to give an extra gift. But people are looking creatively at resources beyond their monthly cash flow and pulling from those resources to give a little bit extra. Or they might also make a pledge over time and just give a little extra over time. So those are those resources. So you got the annual, the major gifts. And the third leg of the stool, which is often kind of the silent partner, these are legacy gifts. And Anne spoke to that when she was speaking about the ways that you can develop these gifts for endowment fund. So an endowment will grow through great investment, which ECF provides, but it's going to blossom through these additional gifts, especially legacy gifts, which for most families will be their largest as well as their last gift to their congregation. And so legacy gifts are created from what we'll call lifetime assets. This is not week to week income, month to month income. It's not even really just cash, it's assets. It's those things that have been invested and grown over time. So we're thinking like your house, your retirement account, your investments account, maybe you have some trust accounts, but these are really larger pools of resources and lifetime pools of resources. So a legacy gift is reflective of everything, the whole pie of what God has blessed a family with over the course of their lifetime. And those plans are made differently than just getting together and, what are we going to pledge this year? People will be consulting with their financial advisors, their estate planning attorneys. And we want the congregation to be a part of this, because this is also a part of kind of end of life planning. So think, pastoral planning for funeral planning. It all kind of fits together in those end of life decisions, and what is the legacy that we'll be leaving behind. And congregation life, parish life, and endowment fit into that conversation and those resources for generosity. And so there's no competition there, that it's forming a whole, and each one has its special place, its special part, and its particular source of funding. And there's different ways to enter into conversation in each of those areas. So just the recap, we want endowment committees and stewardship committees to really collaborate and speak to the parishioners about the big picture of their balanced stewardship and generosity for the congregation.
Great, wonderful analogy. And just so everybody knows, the resource that we'll be sending has the diagram of this comprehensive view of stewardship. So you can look for that tomorrow. So, and we're talking about legacy gifts, and Yvonne, as you were talking, I kind of had this image of a puzzle. These different pieces that you put into place for this vibrant endowment giving and stewardship program. Legacy societies, many churches, is a major piece of that puzzle. So, Anne, for churches that don't have a legacy society, talk us through what a church should consider in deciding whether or not they want to create a legacy society.
Yeah, this is a great question, Juliet. And generally, I think churches and other Episcopal organizations really do need to have a mechanism for recognizing the people who have communicated their intent to leave that legacy gift or that planned gift to the church, and to offer that recognition during that person's lifetime. And this is, something that a legacy society can do and is really effective at. I would say, as you're thinking about crafting your legacy society, you should define it as expansively as you can, meaning someone who makes a current gift to the endowment is included alongside those who have communicated their intention to make planned gift, that end of life gift. As a church, you want to honor all the gifts, and there's not any sort of minimum gift size to be recognized as part of the society. Really, I think the best way you can think about creating a legacy society is that it's an opportunity to build community and to be inclusive. Likely when you're thinking about who is giving this type of gift to your endowment, it's the people who are most committed to your church, most interested in seeing it sustained into the future. You want them to meet each other, to build community, and to feel that connection around how much, they really value this group. So whether a person is making a current gift to the endowment, or they've communicated to you in some way that they are going to remember the church as part of their legacy, you want them to be part of the group that's going to be recognized. Now, of course, also a church should always ask if people do want to be anonymous and, honor that intent if they do. But we know that recognition can be a really meaningful motivator for some parishioners, and creating a legacy society is one way to meet that motivation.
Great, awesome. The first webinar that we did was on legacy society events that have an impact, and that is a wonderful way to engage and often reinvigorate a legacy society. Because as you mentioned, Anne, it's about honoring these donors, but also creating community around the shared love of the church and the mission. And it's a great way to even reinvigorate the whole church. So legacy societies can be a great thing. And so thank you for your input on that. So Yvonne, we've discussed different aspects of endowment giving. But at the end of the day, it comes down to a question. You have to make the ask to the donor. And many of our clients talk to us about their hesitation, their fear about making the ask. I mean, unlike you and Anne, they are not established development professionals. Well, some are, some are. So from your experience, what do they need to do to prepare themselves to make the ask and to make the ask successful as well?
So two things. One, I want to echo back to something that Anne mentioned in her first segment, which is this continued repeated messaging. So one way of asking, and even sort of as prep for a conversation ask, is just that included with a mention about the endowment is, have you remembered the endowment in your plans? Just like you would say, have you remembered the parish in your plans? So have you remembered the endowment fund in your plans? And that could just be a little line in a bulletin or a newsletter. It just sort of becomes part of the background. And it's just planting a seed. And sometimes that's all people need. And many times what happens with these conversations is you go in to ask them and you find out, oh, we already did that, you know, and so the conversation becomes an affirmation of the plans that they've made. But the second thing, just as a development professional, is that this is not like an arm twisting thing. This is a conversation with congregations are in such a sweet place because congregations have been an anchor of people's lives for generations, many times, sometimes multiple generations. And so the loyalty and the motivation is already there. The connection is already rich. And so you're speaking with people, just as Anne said, with the Legacy Society, who are already just devoted, committed, in love with your parish. And let's start the conversation there. Share with me, you know, what has been meaningful to you about being part of our congregation over the years. And with that comes people's hopes, dreams, visions for the future, just like with their legacy planning as a whole. People are thinking beyond their lifetime. What can I sow from my life assets that's going to contribute to what I would like to see happen even beyond my lifetime? So you want to talk about those hopes and dreams that they have for the future, because a gift to the endowment fund is a gift to the future. And then you just want to ask, have you considered giving a gift to our endowment fund to ensure a vibrant future for our congregation? And if you've had a meaningful conversation on these other points leading up, it's just a natural. And if they're not ready at this point, you've sowed the seed. You've sown the seed, and you have that additional, you know, continual little reminder that's coming in other places to just remind them that when the time is right and they're making their plans, that this is a part of their plans.
Great, great, awesome. Thank you so much for your wisdom. Now let's see if we have any questions or if anyone wants to ask, so that we can, please avail yourself, make use of this time. Okay, great. Do we have a replay of the Legacy Society events webinar? Yes, we do. And actually, Brad, if you could put that slide up, because we had the first webinar we had was on Legacy Society events that make an impact. Let me make sure I get the title right. Yeah, Legacy Society events that make an impression. And the second one was on marketing your endowment. So both are up on ECF's YouTube channel. This webinar as well, we will put up this week so that you can avail yourselves of both of those. And you can email us, because we had resources for both webinars to help jumpstart your Legacy Society event planning, to help jumpstart your marketing. So please let us know if you would like to receive the resource as well. Any other questions for this panel of development experts that we can ask them? Okay. Well, and actually, I have a question. You mentioned in your first question, but I wanted to kind of put a fine point on it. You mentioned trust as being a key component of encouraging donors, and having a your endowment policies, your spending policies. Could you just broaden that out a little bit more for us?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think, fundamentally, even as Yvonne was just talking about, right, ultimately you're extending an invitation, and the response to that invitation is going to be very much informed by how people feel about, the church's stewardship writ large. And that's not just about the endowment. I mean, we're here today talking about endowment gifts, but fundamentally, people need to trust the church, and that the church is going to steward that gift over time when they're not here. And transparency is usually, sort of the biggest component of building trust. And then the other part, which I think has been woven through all of our remarks today, is building that relationship, right? So you're not walking up to someone on Sunday and saying, "Oh, hey, we're in your will, right? You've already done that? Great, thanks." It's like you're building the relationship over time. You're having the incredibly beautiful conversations that Yvonne was so eloquent about, in terms of talking about their hopes and dreams for the future, and seeing how they can think about what the church is going to do with that gift. I mean, the reality is, you can't take it with you, right? You can't take it with you. So where is it going at the end? Hopefully it is going, as Christians, part of our call is to think about how we are building God's kingdom. And so a part of that is our response to what are we doing with our assets at the end of life. So I think through transparency and then through relationships, so it's not an ask, it's a relational dynamic taking place over time that ultimately results in an invitation. Those are the ways that you can build trust within your congregation that will inevitably, I think, lead people to be excited and to want to leave that gift to you.
That's great. Yvonne, any last thoughts before we close our webinar on endowment giving?
I just want to say that trust thing is so key, as Anna's mentioned. And just on the practical side, when you have high trust, you're more likely to receive unrestricted gifts. And that's a whole other conversation, a whole other thing. But when there's low trust, sometimes even if you receive a gift, it's so laden with restrictions that you struggle later to even be able to use that gift. So that building trust is important on so many levels, but just at the practical level, it helps people to feel confident in leaving your congregation an unrestricted gift, which is what you want.
Right, yes. Yes, thank you so much, Yvonne and Anne, for all the wisdom you've given us today. And thank you for everyone for joining us today. We hope you found the discussion enlightening. At ECF's Endowment Management, it is our mission in the endowment management program to help you create sustainable and thriving endowment management programs. So please contact us if you have needs to structure, invest, or grow your endowment. We are more than happy to help. As you can see, we're people that are passionate about the work that we do and with open hearts. So feel free to contact us for any of your needs regarding your endowment. Thank you so much for joining us. And this concludes our third and final endowment giving webinar. Thank you so much for coming.